All right, y'all. Good to go.
4 p.m. Let's call a meeting of the Council City Water and Sewer Board to order. Start the meeting with the approval of minutes of Thursday, September 3rd, 2020 special call meeting. So moved. Have a motion from Steve Freeman. Have a second.
I'll second.
Second from Don Freeman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Looking at the financial report, the September dashboard report looks a lot better than it did in August. The water revenue is up above budget. We had some catch up on some bad meters in that, that brought that back up. Back on track with the revenue. The cost in the water is still running slightly higher than budget. But we've had some extra items that we've had to do that are one-time items for the year. And we hit in this month. So I feel like that they will get back in order as we go forward. You can see over in the expense comparison that the maintenance is up quite a bit above budget. But again, we think we've had some unusual hits early in the fiscal year. Looking down to the sewer revenue is staying on track with the way we budgeted, slightly above, not very much. The expenses are below what we budgeted for this portion of the fiscal year, although they're higher than revenue, and we're running at a slight loss in margin right now. The labor is down from budget, and all the other items are pretty much on budget and expense column. So far, the year's holding pretty much like we expected it to. Any questions on, any discussion on revenue and cost?
Only a typo issue is the bottom left, fiscal year 2019 rather than 2018.
I'll say what you're talking about. That's in the combined accounts chart.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's just a typo.
I'll get that corrected. All right. Any other comment on financials? We'll look at the assets and the cash at the end of the September cash balance. 981,013 compared to a year ago, 889,509. So we're slightly ahead on cash in the bank, holding steady with where we like to be, somewhere around $1 million in the cash account for emergencies or whatever comes up. out there. Barbie has finished out. Any other comments? Questions?
Dan, just speak into your mic a little louder. I can hear you, but just lean into that mic or push it toward you a bit.
All right. Roger had Kevin Leonard is from Mayfield Water, and he's broken out himself into a private company. Left there and setting up his own private company and doing outside work for water and sewer people as needed. And Roger and Silas went over and met with him. And he came over and did some work for us to show us a little bit about what he could do. And I think he did some leak tests in Rolling Hills area. So Roger, you want to let them know what took place there?
Yeah, Kevin invested in quite a bit of this leak detection equipment. We had talked about buying that several years ago in the house, the detectors, and we never did go forward with the expenditure. It's pretty significant, and he started a business, and a couple of folks that worked with him and worked with him at Mayfield, and we had some concerns about Rolling Hills area and some leaks that potentially were in there. We'll do a leak detection study up there. The way that works is they use listening devices, and they listen in on each of the services there. These listening devices pick up a unique sound frequency that's commensurate with water leaks, and then they went through and they analyzed about, I guess they listened to about 65 or so services that we delineated roughly from Fifth Avenue to Hickory Street, 7th Avenue, and on up to Evergreen. And they listened, and we found 4 leaks there in that area. I was expecting to find more, quite frankly, but he found 4 there for us to fix. And I think as we talk about water plants and all these kind of things, and trying to figure out, okay, what should we be designing for, on the water production part of it, water loss is a pretty important topic that I feel that the board would probably have to focus on in the future. As you guys see on our dashboard reports, we run a 12-month moving average on water loss of about 15%, every month. So 15% of producing approximately 1.5 million gallons or so. That's 300,000 gallons a month or so that we're losing, and we try to capture that. They've been pretty good about capturing their loss over in Mayfield, and they're down to like below 3%. So it's pretty easy, when you look at water loss, our production cost is probably $2 per thousand. So, the 300,000, that's 300 times 2, you can come up with some pretty significant numbers quickly. And one of the things that Silas, we've talked about, we want to try to get that water loss number down. We think that there's a good return on the investment on it if we just keep working at it. And this was a good pilot project for us just to see what his capabilities were. And so we're happy with that, and we're going to move forward and fix those leaks there. We're going to talk to you here in a minute about some other operational priorities that we're working on. So,
Were those leaks on our side of the meter?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And the leaks, they'll find them on the customer side. They're able to delineate those pretty well when they're in the field. This equipment allows you to first sense the general area it's in, and then it allows you to pinpoint it. We used it over here. I don't know if you remember, we were supplying this creek with some nice clear water for years. It was like a trout stream, and here was a pretty good leak across the road, probably a 25, 30 gallon a minute leak. And we found that, dug it up and fixed it. And there's more of that. And that's I know you keyed in on water loss before, and just the implications of that. And we do want to be good stewards of that. You don't want to have to build a bigger water plant than you really need because you got a real leaky system. I mean, we just need to work on it. You know, Public Service Commission would like to see their regulated systems be below 15% loss. And so that's kind of the target that we shoot for there. You know, we'd like to see ours get down below 5 if we could. You know.
Question, I can really see the value of, that type of leak detection. How much skill of the operator is it related to? Because I can see routinely having a professional who's used to doing it, do it for us, rather than trying to develop the expertise within the house. Because if it takes a lot of expertise to do it, then it's better to go outside and find someone with it.
Yeah, that's why we wanted to do this project. I mean, the answer to that question, you're gonna be better the more you do. And it's you got to be able to distinguish too between the different frequencies that you're hearing, and you got to kind of filter out the bad frequencies and look at the good. And you know, it took them a day to do those 65 meters up there, and I don't think we can compete with that. Just doing it periodically, I just don't see it with equipment cost as much as it is, and it being electronic equipment. I really design life of it. This would probably be the most cost-effective way to do it. Is you don't tie your people up; they go out and flag the leaks. And we're going to talk here in a minute about how we might incorporate leak detection in our automated meter reading program. And this could help supplement that. So,
Were those large leaks, Roger, or just small?
they were mostly service line leaks, just small leaks. They weren't very large leaks. So, can you hear me, Bill?
I'm listening.
Okay. You don't have all the information that's here on the table. We didn't email that to you. I kind of thought you'd be here, and if you needed to, we could probably email you some of that here later on.
That'd be great.
Okay.
All right, then, while you're there, Roger, let's go ahead and take a look at the AMR water meter system. I believe that's in the packet, the next two items, I think, the purchase order.
Yeah, and so the last meeting, the board voted to proceed on with the purchase of the meters, and so the purchase orders were written. And I wanted to bring that back to the board just to make sure that you guys see what the final numbers are. As you recall, we decided we would finance it through the Kentucky Rural Water Financing Corporation, and then they did have a bond sale and things went well on that. So everything's in place and to order these meters and getting those moving here. And so there's two POs in your package. One of them for Consolidated Pipe Supply, and they were the low bidders on the meters, and their bid was actually $171,891. And so we had the clerks run a detailed printout of the meters that we needed. Carrie was able to go in there and sort out the meters for each rate class and identify which meters we've already installed that had the electronic transmitters on, which ones that did not. And we were able to get an accurate list of what we needed to order. And that's what's reflected in the PO. And I just wanted you guys to see that. On the module end of it, of course, the meters are Mueller meters, and they don't come with transmitters. And we bought the transmitters through Itron. It's what we elected to do. That's what we have in our system. And that's what we wanted to go through and go forward with, because they've been reliable for us and it was proven. So on the Itron, that's going through United Systems. And so the PO that I've got here, just to recall the procurement on the Itron system, it had a base bid and then it had an alternate tag to it. I want to make sure that we're clear on all that. So here's how that went. The base bid was the transmitters, and that's the actual electronic transmitter that goes down and is tied to the meter and put in the valve. And then we had antennas with that, and then we had a vehicle mounted radio reader and then the software. So the base bid that was put in by United Systems, the total amount where we had originally projected, the base bid was $156,295. Now, what the alternate bid was to equip each of those meter installations with leak detectors, okay? And so our reasoning and recommended the leak detectors, is now you do not have you do not have inspections being done at the meters every time. So if you have leaks, you usually not going to know it unless property owner calls you. Now, we got good property owners that call us and tell us about leaks, but we've got some that never call you. So the alternate bid is to put one of these electronic sound leak detectors in every other service. And that's what the alternate deal is. Those things are $100 a piece and they're expensive, but looking at the numbers, we felt like they would pay for themselves. And the software package for that was $69.95. We did call around in Warren County to put these leak detectors in, and they're proven. What they'll do is they alert you if there's a leak within that general area. They'll tell you when you go by and read the meters, when you process the data and software, they'll tell you there's a leak in this general vicinity. And then we can take the manual stuff in there or go look at it and inspect it and find where the leak is and repair it. And we kicked it around internally to either have them or not have them. And our recommendation is to have them. Your alternative is if you don't have them, you usually just have to walk to each meter setting on a quarterly or semi-annual basis to determine whether or not you got any leaks or not. So our recommendation on that PO is to buy the leak detection system, and the total of that's $223,490. When you add that to the other number, we're like 375, something like that. I'm going to shoot rough $375,000. It's still significantly less than what we budgeted for, and in our financing we lined up with actually for about $470,000 total, and so it's quite a bit below that right now. So one of the things that we're wrestling with here is, okay, now you got to put these meters in, that's coming in, and so how do you accomplish that with what you got going on? And we're trying to determine whether or not we contract somebody outside to help us do that, or we do it all in-house. And we're probably going to hammer that out tomorrow on trying to figure out what to recommend on that. But I think our gut feeling is right now we may want to use like a hybrid type system, whereas we use an outside contractor to work with a couple of our people here just to get them in as quickly as we can. So there is a cost with it, and the implications are, it could get some expense there. I'm trying to remember the dollar per day. Was it $1,200 per day for an outside tree solace? I think it's the number.
Yeah, it's very close to 1,200 a day.
1,200 a day, but that's without the vac truck. And if we had to have a vac truck, it's an extra $700.
Yeah, it was that back truck was $200 an hour,
Yeah.
$500 minimum.
Yeah.
And then just for the 2-man crew for a full day.
Okay. So what you get into when you do meter changeout programs, over time, the meters fill up with sediment, and you've got to vacuum that out of there and expose the meter and get it to where you can get it out. So we don't know how bad that is system-wide. You can only make assumptions to that degree. We know we might have to use some vacuum trucks to do that. We got one, and we will use our truck. We got that sewer vac truck, and it can be used for this. So a crew of 2 could use that, and then some others. So we've got roughly 1,450 of these things to swap out, and it's going to take a while to do it. And one of the things you get into, invariably, you're going to tear a meter setting up, getting one of these meters out that hadn't been removed in a long time, where everything's rusted up, and you can't turn the stop valve. And we estimate you're probably looking at having to rebuild maybe 100 services in this thing. So that said, I talked to the financing people, and they told us that we can adjust the funding up or down as needed based on what we think we need to do. And so here's I'm hoping, I didn't talk to you, Chairman, about this, but I'm hoping that we could put together a brief special call meeting here in about another week, because I've got another bid opening I'm gonna talk about here in a minute, to dealing with that well transmission main project, and we're gonna need to take action on that, and at that time, maybe we can come back to you and make a recommendation on whether or not we include any outside contractors in on this installation, have a little bit better idea of how we're gonna put all these in. But we want to get them in pretty quickly, you know, that was the deal. And we want to see how fast, you know, we can get them in, and we,
Roger, how many meters total are we trying to put in?
1,450 or so, just roughly, just round numbers,
Right.
go around. We do have some bigger meters too that we've got to address that we didn't address first time around. We have some pretty new ones that were in the system that we did not make electronically, but there's not many of those. And it won't take long to get those in, I believe, but
Is this leak detection, does that notify you or the city hall, or is it notify the owner?
well, the data from the leak detection will be stored on the modules. And since we're putting a drive-by system, it'll be collected when we drive by and pick it up. And then when we process that data, the operators will see, hey, the frequencies are showing potential leaks along these settings during this meter reading cycle, so they can further investigate.
Yeah, so they get that about once a month then.
Once a month now. Now, this system, the reason we check, you know, we're going with the Itron system is that ultimately you're gonna have the ability to go to advanced metering infrastructure when you wanna go there. And it's a little more expensive because you gotta mount transmitters around town. We'll have to have repeater tires and transmitters if we wanna do that. And that's when you get the real-time reading. You know, as technology advances, invariably the pressure will be on utilities to go to that further step. And we just felt that this was a good step, get the infrastructure in there that can be expanded at some later point in time, and then we'll just move forward there. We may be able to get a deal where we can work with one of the power companies to use their infrastructure and repeaters to bounce our signals too. That was something I didn't want to rule out. We didn't get into a lot of discussions with them about that, but there's a possibility. The only issue we got two different power providers in our community, so. But I'd be glad to answer any questions. Like I say, you know, these are the numbers that we're recommending. You know, the big thing I think for the board, I just want to make clear to you, you don't have to install the leak detection in. I think that's a commitment whether you want to or not. I just wanted to make sure that you guys saw that, what we're doing, and whether or not you want to do it. And I guess your staff recommendation is that the return on the investment will pay for itself in time. You know, I can't give you an exact year. It's all dependent upon the number of leaks in the system, but.
Well, I think it's a sell to the homeowner, and that it somewhat protects them too, when they've got something going on they don't know about.
How long is the leak detection warranty there? Is it, how long is it expected to last? If that's a system we add to it.
Well, the leak detection system, there's a prorated warranty on these components here. Everything that we've spoken of today, prorated warranties. On the meters have a 15-year warranty that they'll read within the regulation standards, AWWA C700 standards range. I think 15 years is prorated out to 20. The transmitters are like 10 years basic, full replacement prorated out to 20. Leak detectors are the same deal there. So you've got, you know, your minimum warranty is 10 years prorated on out to 20. So yeah, we do have warranty in there.
Like the other computers and phones, it's not gonna be a 5-year deal and out. Is that what you're saying?
No, we, you know, so we're looking at this as a design life of 20 years. That's what we're looking at it as. Most people in the industry, that's what they're looking at, design life of 20. You know, we did a lot of number crunching on this whole deal through the progression over the years, and we were looking at a return on investment somewhere on the order of 7 to 9 years of this deal, compared to how we were doing them manually. So, and so the design life, you know, like I say, we feel pretty confident about 20 years. We got a lot of positive displacement meters in our system that are probably 40 years or 50 years old. That's not saying that's good, but these things are warranted to be within their measurement standards after 15 years. I would say that we do need to test some periodically, and we can. It's not that expensive. We do test our commercial meters every 5 years, and that's very important, because as we start talking about the water plants and all that stuff and your usage trends and who's using water in the system, it's the big meters. And they're, you know, they make up 45% of your usage or more, so.
How much was that loan for, Roger?
The loan right now that we had set it up for was, our share was like, something like 420, something like that, 420 to 430. And, that took care of everything, and we can expand that. Originally, when we were looking at it, was 470 to 490, but we backed it down when we got these actual numbers in here. So somewhere in that range from 420 to 430.
So you got 384 on these two sheets.
Right, yeah. The time you know, the way that program works, and you know, when time you pay your full interest cost and everything you load on it, that's what it came out to be. The bond sales did go well within the area of what we had originally talked about. So we feel pretty good. It's a 5-year note. And, you know, as we discussed before, we put the $4 infrastructure charge on that, plus the revenue we expect to recoup from putting the new meters in the system. We believe that'll take care of that extra capital expense to retire that note.
And I think we talked about the fact that the $4 per meter charge was going on the first of the year.
Well, tentatively, that was the thought, but we feel like pretty strong, you need to have your new meters in before you do that. And so that there's a possibility you may want to delay that until you actually got them in, you know. I don't know where a customer would, you know, I don't know that poses a problem, putting a lag on that. I really don't. Even if you had to lag it out until the July 1st or something, putting it on. But the reality is, before you close all your loan and everything, you start your debt service, you're not going to start seeing that until after July 1 anyway. So I think you've got some flexibility there.
About $6,800 a month.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
I think the leak detection will have a selling point for the customers.
I think you've got to control your water loss today, and you're going to see why when we start talking about water plants and how much water plants cost. You need to be careful with that.
And this will pick up on a lease. It's not necessarily a 10,000 gallon a month leak. You know, you pick up on smaller leaks.
No, the deal is you just get so many smaller ones, and they just pick on you. And I would like to see, you know, maybe have Kevin come in here and give you a little bit of what they found in Mayfield, because Mayfield right now is pretty much considered the state of the art in Kentucky. And they've been very aggressive on their programs. But he can talk to you about dollars, you know, okay, it cost me this much to find them and fix them. This is how much I'm saving. So you can tell your customer, look, you know, this is why we're doing it, because ultimately we're going to save big dollars, you know, big dollars. If we keep your rates down, if we save big dollars.
Right.
Everybody okay?
Yes.
All right, so we'll go with leak detection and, we'll talk about the, outside contracting when we get together again. You can get,
Okay.
you and Silas can get us some information on cost of doing that, or how much you think it'll cost or save us. I know that the guys have their hands full with everything that's going on, so it may be worthwhile to look at that and see. Okay. All right, Roger, we got the Wellfield expansion project, how we coming on that?
Yeah, so, we have a procurement out right now for the transmission main element to tie new well number 6 on. We did get the permits for that, so they're gonna open bids on that 2:00 Thursday. We hope to have 3 bids on it. I've been contacted by 3 prospective bidders. 2 are holding plans on it. I hope the 3rd will come and pick plans up on it. People are relatively busy. It's a clean project. There's not a lot in the way. We're having them bid it for 2 different alternative pipe materials, one for HDPE, fused HDPE pipe, and then the other for ductile iron pipe. So we're interested to see how that pricing comes in. When it comes in, we've got the material pricing as well, and we're ready to get that ordered and get that thing going. So that's why I would like to see about maybe having a special call meeting sometime next week to go over those and this other issue that we talked about. So we can knock that out before bad weather comes and get the well tied in. We're doing some additional testing on the well to meet the drinking water requirements and what the source water element of the Division of Waters requires us to do some testing on organics, inorganics, and radiological and those types of parameters, just to make sure there are no problems before that well's brought online. And we've already initiated that process. So once we get that data back and then get the transmission line back, we can bring that well online. And then we plan to abandon that well number 6. The well number 6 is the one with higher iron. We've never really used it in production, and so we would like to abandon that. Well 5 is a 1,000 gallon a minute rated well, and it has a 1,000 gallon a minute pump system on it. It's going to be a nice well, I believe. So wanted to update the board on that.
So let me clarify that. We're tying in well number 5.
Well number 6. Well number 5 is the one that's over by the railroad that was built when we did the Duke power plant. There were 2 wells built at that time on the north side of Lone Valley Road, wells number 4 and 5. We're going to abandon number 5 due to the high iron content of well number 6 was drilled where John Norman Martin's garage basically set right there in that vicinity. And that's where we drilled well number 6 based on recommendations of the hydrogeologic study that we did. So the new well number 6 has not been tied in. That's what the goal of this project is, and get it in production. And then, as we run in the future, we're going to keep close tabs on what our specific capacities are. We'll measure those periodically about every 6 months, and that'll be your decision tree for cleaning your wells. And Silas is up to speed on all of that, on how that works. And, you got to keep your wells clean. That's been one of the big deals that we've had to do. And well number 1's working great right now, but over time it'll produce less due to the screen fouling and the formation fouling around it. So.
Okay, anything further on that? Any questions?
So when you get number 6 going, that'll make a total of
We'll have 5 productions, 5 production wells.
Wells.
Yeah. So 3 of them are 1,000 gallons a minute and 2 of them are 750s.
okay.
Yeah.
Some time ago, there was something brought up about people who had horses
Yeah.
And I never did hear how that turned out.
So the Wilsons that are the home that's out there,
The-
there was,
the
there was,
one
they put a horse out there
Yeah.
and there was some question about where they had their fences and shed.
Uh-huh.
And so we did a property survey and they were encroaching on the city's property
Where the
So-
wells,
with
Where
their
the
barn,
wells.
with their barn, in our well field.
right,
Where Ann Martin built that house.
right. Mhm.
And, so they were encroaching and we wrote a letter and told them that they were encroaching. I think the barn got moved too. So I think everything, all the encroachments have been removed and they're on their property now.
Okay.
So there's one horse out there. And I think we're good to go. We're gonna run that transmission main up there parallel with that property line. That's why we wanted to make sure that they didn't have any encroachments on us, because we're gonna take it right up through there, so.
Well, I just knew we had talked about it and I
So
never
that-
did hear what,
So we got it revised. It cost us some money to do it. I mean, had to have a property survey done on it, but, we just needed to get it done. I didn't want to have to set that transmission main off any further. I wanted to get it as close as I could on the edge of that property line up there, so we kept that area as open as we could. So, then it helps keep the minimizes the cost, but, reducing the footage of pipe required, so.
And we need to put a fence or anything down that line.
Well, to delineate the boundaries, it probably wouldn't hurt anything, to do something. We could put a fence in there. I mean, there's an electric fence right now?
Yeah.
Electric fence,
Yes,
okay.
they have a hot wire that they're keeping the horse in with.
Okay, so we could talk to them about that. And probably put one in if we need to, the standard field with a double barbed wire top on it, if we needed to do it.
Real expensive on it or whatever.
No,
Just
just a farm type fence, a right of way style fence. Yeah, not a security fence. We will put a security fence around the well though, like we do on all the wells, so.
Any other questions, Donna, anybody?
no, thank you.
Wastewater plant,
Okay, so we're still in the middle of corrective action plan, and then we briefed the board, last meeting, about the alternatives that we looked at and the chosen or selected alternative or preferred alternative. The engineers moving forward with the design of the preferred alternative, and they're involved in some field studies. They'll be doing a geotechnical investigation this week, and they continue to work on the design drawings. Now, the preferred alternative will move the influent lift station up next to the wastewater plant facility. I personally, after looking at it, I like the idea of that. You guys remember we had some property title concern issues with our existing facilities, and to iron all those out is going to take a long time. And if we kept it down there, we're going to have to build a road above the floodplain. And here we can put it up close to there and use the existing roadway network and not have to get into all that. And ultimately, maybe a little bit lower cost alternative, but that's going on. The other thing that we're working on, that we're getting ready to try to replace our diffuser in the river, which is part of the corrective action plan. It's been fabricated in May. We've conducted a survey of the river bank last week, and we're working on the last details of what that's going to look like in terms of how that's to be installed in the river. And we plan to try to do that before the end of October. We'll probably do it, hire an excavator to come in with a long reach track hole, and then we may need to get a diving firm to help us, but we'll try to keep that installation cost under $20,000 or so. I think we can do that. But the other thing that we're working on is the permanent installation of the parasitic acid system. And I think what I've got in our mind is to probably use the pilot unit that we've got and then get it more permanently installed and put the tanks over there on the slab behind the storage building. looking at probably finishing the design up on the wastewater treatment improvements. I'm gonna guess somewhere around the end of the year. And then our project management schedule had those being procured sometime around February, March, with the goal to get the thing under construction around May and have the bulk of the construction done 2021. So that would be the last part of our corrective action plan, and we would hope to get out of that time. You know, I'm happy to report that our treatment at our wastewater plant has been great. I mean, we've never seen it treat this well, but we're getting pretty much, if you take a look at our average results on our DMR, Silas and his guys are getting tertiary results in a lagoon plant, which is unheard of. But it's really because, you know, we're only half load. Once we got rid of all those solids, we got our detention times back, and all the systems are working like they should. The parasitic acid's working good. Everything's working good. Now, that's not to say that we won't have some problems when we have wet weather. When you have wet weather and you start flowing real high flows, those things can go south on you. So we got to keep working on leaks and get this new pump station and everything, and, you know, manage the operation. But I think the state's happy with what's going on from what I can tell.
I would suggest we not totally bury that property line issue with the railroad. And that where it's at.
Yeah.
Right away.
We need to address that.
Yeah,
We
I
will.
would
And
not just let that go loose.
No.
We don't know where it's at. We ought to get that established at some point.
We do. We need to work on it. The issue though is they won't move fast on it. And, you know, we really, you know, I think the driver on that decision, those costs were so similar to those alternatives. And I just can't see, you know, going round and round with them for 6 to 8 months while we've got a viable solution where we could just avoid it. So
Yeah, I would move forward with that, but I wouldn't let that go on
I
the
agree.
forever. You know, at some point we need to know that out there.
So what you got, what that would entail is, you know, we'll have to move forward. And we were going to do that anyway, go ahead and get a solid boundary survey on our properties down there. And we don't have that. I mean, you know, when you run that chain of title and look at what, you know, how that property's traded, I mean, we're going back to old descriptions that go back into the early 1900s. And so it's kind of hard to follow that chain of title, but I think we got enough now to get a good boundary on it, and we will. I'm not so sure, and I apologize for not remembering, but I'm not sure that we didn't approve that with that modification on that engineering contract we made last month. I think that boundary survey was included in that. So I don't have it in front of me tonight, but I'm pretty sure it was in there. So that was in there, and then floodplain permitting, I believe, were those two scopes that were in that. So we'll proceed on with that. That'll drive the answer to that, and then we'll have to get Greg involved in it.
Yeah, I think moving it's the right answer now, and if we've got time, we can probably do it in a more cost-effective manner than, you know, pedal to the metal kind of thing.
Yeah.
All right, you want to get into go over the water treatment plant study preliminary engineering report?
Yeah, so I want to keep, I want to just kind of keep this as a brief overview because we'll invite the consultant in. I just wanted to brief the board before the consultant comes in, so you'll have an idea of what they're talking about and what all's entailed with that. So I'll just quickly go over kind of the scope of work that has been looked at here in trying to evaluate the needs for a new water plant in Calvert City. So one of the first tasks that are involved in, you got to develop what design capacity do you need to meet the needs of the community for future years. And they have done that. And they came up with a recommendation for a 3 million gallon a day plant based on maximum daily demand out in the future, assuming that industrial demands continue to increase on the trends that they are. So their recommended capacity for a new water plant is 3 million gallons a day. And I think it's probably arguable. And I think you just need to keep that in the back of your mind. I'm not sure that we need to build one that big, but that's what the recommendation of the consultant is.
We're currently running at about 1.5 million.
Right, where our average production's 1.5 million. We do have peak days where we're running over 2 million gallons a day, and that's what they're saying, is you design your water plant for a peak day. But I would argue, from my perspective, that we tend to, as engineers, Paul would probably agree with this, we tend to over-design things. Our standards are usually pretty conservative. And I would argue, while our filtration plant that we're running right now is designed for 3 gallons per minute per square foot of filter area, I would argue that you could double that rate and not affect the water quality. Standards being as they are, that you're required to do that. The bottom line is our average daily demand right now is 1 million gallons a day, 1.5 million. Point is that all that's arguable. And what you want to do is you want to build it large enough to take care of your needs over the next 20 years, but don't build it so big that you end up paying a lot more money for it than you'll ever use. So that's the fine line you got to walk. And that's when I've talked about water laws. You want to make sure that you don't have a lot of extraneous water laws in here. And we'll get into some numbers here in a minute. You'll start seeing what we're talking about, dollar-wise.
Okay, you said, right now we're about 1 million average. And we're designing
1.5 million production in the last 2 years.
And we're looking at a design of 3.
3. So now Division of Water usually will start to get on to you when you reach about 85% of your design capacity on your average daily production. So, in our case, that's going to be 1.7 MGD. So we still got a couple 100,000 gallons out there. And we talked about 300,000 gallons a day of loss. So if you cut another couple 100,000 out, you can kind of see where I'm going with that,
The big increase would be with industrial users, right?
That's what we've seen our increased flows.
Improve the
Yeah,
water quality, that's where.
Could be, yeah, and that's the whole driver for that, and we'll discuss that. That's a pretty important point of the study as well. So first thing is to determine the capacity that you're going to need for the facility. And then the next thing is to take a look at what kind of water quality standards that you've got to meet with the facility. So we tasked the consultant with looking at removing hardness, as part of this whole process. And you talk to the mayor, that's big on his mind, because in his mind, that you've got to give the public something. If you're going to put a new water plant out there and you're going to ask them to commit to so many dollars for taking care of retiring the debt service or the capital requirements for the project, that you got to give them something new that you really are not giving them right now. That's the thought process on that. So one of the things that we have problems with in our system, periodically we have complaints about hardness, and the fact that the hardness precipitates out in the hot water heaters and they don't last as long. And then there are a lot of folks who have complained about the streaking on the dishes.
Lime scale.
Lime scale.
I request several people and told them that we were looking at this and it was going to be expensive.
Yeah.
I said, just tell me, is it something you're willing to pay for?
Yeah.
I've not had one single person say no.
Okay.
Yeah, but they know it'll cost $14,000 a piece.
Over what time frame?
Well, over 20 years or whatever.
Yeah. So what does that come down to a month? So if I told a guy, I said, I think it may raise your water bill maybe $10, $15 a month if you got quality of softness, is it worth it? He said, yeah. I've not had one person to say no. It's not. I tell you, my pet peeve is you can't wash a car in this city without going back over and getting all the spots off of it.
Yeah, that's a hardness problem,
Yeah.
and so that
And get
that's
built up in your pipes,
yeah.
and in your faucets.
While it's healthy to drink the water. It's not a health hazard, but it is a nuisance problem. So that's one of the biggest challenges you have as you go.
$60 a month for a customer.
Yeah.
You go up $60 a month.
I agree with Paul. That's my math. It comes out to be 60 more a month if you're talking 14,000 per person over 20 years.
I'm sorry to disagree with you.
Well,
Is
they
it-
do go 30. 30 years.
If you go 30-year,
And that's the subject you're not gonna get any new.
I've got it down to $40 a month per person
Yeah,
over 30 years.
You know, you've got flexibility there, but there's a lot of, this whole decision tree is complicated. It's gonna take a while to work through this before you can get to a point where you wanna go. My thought process, a lot of people say, man, I'd never borrow money on a 40-year term. I never do it. You know, I've heard people say that over and over again. But the reality of this is you're talking about an asset that's gonna have a design life of about 50 years. So who pays for that? You know, who pays for that? Does the customers that are here right now for the next 20 years wipe out that total capital cost? And then the customers 20 years beyond that, they get a free ride on that?
oh, no.
You know, so you got, that's another thing that you need to think about. What kind of term of financing are you gonna use, and what all's included?
I figure for this thing, 30 years is you're gonna replace the whole system.
Yeah.
You're gonna replace the whole thing. And that $40 a month, that's strictly the,
Number of meters we're reporting on out of 1,400 and something.
okay, they have a 20-year total, so on their thing.
So one of the things a consultant will do for you, they'll get more specific about this, and you kind of got to get towards, to me, the decision tree is, am I going to remove hardness or not? So when you talk about water quality outside of hardness, you really don't have problems in the city. You almost borderline not have to filter. And if you were very careful about how you manage your wells after you cleaned them and not brought them online until they met standards, you probably wouldn't have to filter. But right now, what we got is that we do have some buildups in our raw water lines due to different things, just metal precipitating or bacterial precipitating on the lines, because we don't disinfect out there. If you got natural bacteria in your water, they're going to tuberculate on your lines. So periodically they'll bark through, and I'm glad we got our filters because we catch it all on our filters. We don't let it through there. So that tells me, and I think the operators would agree, that we need some form of filtration. Now, you can argue about what type of filtration it is. I really believe that Calvert City could operate just fine off of pressure filtration. These guys here believe that too, based on what I'm seeing, which is, that puts you into a Class B style plant. We've had all these arguments about how these plants are staffed and all of that. We just believe that that's probably the best way to go. So the water, you know, after you come up with your desirable capacity, it's the quality. So the arguments are going to be, do we spend the money for the softening or not? So we see the capital cost, and they came through and they analyzed these three processes and said, hey, look, looks like ion exchange is the best bet for the city. And I agree with that. Now, I'll couch it to say you've got to maintain your water well quality, your well field. You got to maintain your quality. If you get polluted out there, you're in trouble if you go that direction, because you're not going to remove organics with this treatment methodology. The only one of those options that you can take organics out with is RO, but that to me, that wouldn't seem warranted to me. I would set it up to where if I had to put those in later, I could, but and I think, as we've discussed about it before, this boils down to a certain degree, industry really needs to be involved in that discussion too. If we put a little bit better product out, are they willing to buy a little more water from us? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
To me, well, where we are, Westlake has water softeners. Where we need soft water, we use that. Where we don't want to pay for it because we don't need it.
Right. So that may be the answer. And that's why, you know, one of the things that we're going to recommend here, you know, when we get the consultant in here, that you put together a steering committee in the community. You need to have a couple water board members on it, and you need to put a couple of council on it, you know, and so that way you got, that's the bodies that are going to be involved in making the decisions for the capital outlays and whether or not they're going to front the rate increases and stuff for it. And then they need to have the conversations with the industry and customers and you know, you need to survey your customer base as well and see, okay, this is what we're looking at doing, and it's looking like it's gonna be this much money. There's more options out there, and we can kind of talk about that as we go through this thing. But so the water quality is a big option. Then the other one's the site. Let's say, okay, what's the site look like? You know, what are we gonna do about a site? And that's what we tasked them with. And they came out with a recommendation in this report. And I don't know that I necessarily agree with it. I would want them to look a little closer at that. But their recommendations over here on this piece of property, the city bought behind the school over here. And it's
In the woods there?
yeah, or up on the higher part of the hill, not down in the bottoms, but kind of right, you know how the elementary school is and that hill lays off in there. They're talking about leveling that out and developing that site for this. And they say it's close enough to the transmission mains to do it, and it is, but you're gonna have to bore underneath the tracks to get there. And that to me is a problem. That's another licensing issue and opens up that can of worms again. And as I think about it, Silas, we've talked, Brad, John, everybody, we've always held off on developing the public works site back there. Steve, you and I, we've even talked, that's in your front door over there. But that whole back side of this side up against this park, that's where we think, I kind of think it needs to be there. And there's some advantages to that, is I think you can have all your equipment in one location, and you can more effectively share your equipment and resources, and you just got all your public works folks right there together, and you got your plant there together with it. But that needs to be hashed out. But that's an important part of the scope. So their recommendations this side, and I would ask them to clarify to us, you know, why are you making that recommendation? What rules out this site here? And I didn't really see that answer before. And so we'll challenge them on that before they come and give us a presentation on that. But
Where do we go under the railway tracks?
right back here at the corner of the park, right as you get into the corner of the park, both of those lines go underneath that railroad right there. And then they're on the other side of the railroad all the way down.
Okay, like, is it on this side of the lake?
Yes, right at this edge of the lake. So you know where the park property line is?
Yeah.
When you walk down there and you see that gate and there, it's just down there by that property line. That's where it jumps up underneath the railroad right there. Both of them parallel each other.
So I know we talked about that part of the park there,
Yeah.
that sort of area there before.
So if you look at the back side of the public works where they built the salt bin and stuff, that's kind of the general area in there. And I just think that the footprint's big enough to put that facility in there. And you, of course, you could put the equipment shed or operations buildings or anything anywhere in there. And those facilities could be shared with the staff. We're, you know, Calvert City operationally, Silas has got 6 with him right now, and Brad's got 6, 5, 6, something like that.
Probably street maintenance itself probably has about 6.
6, and then 3 parks.
Mhm.
So we're not real big.
Refuge.
Yeah, refuge 3. So
I'll back up in our conversation for a minute. You mentioned about 3 million gallons a day recommendation and plant usage having to expand. Do we have feedback or a communication tool with our chemical plants out there about their water use and their current satisfaction with what we're doing or not doing, about their interest in using more water?
we do have communication with industrial facilities, but we need to ramp that up for this exercise. And our communications with most of the folks that are using the water on a day-to-day basis. And if we're not suffering or not having problems, there's usually not much communication. But if somebody,
No news is good news.
we are the backup water supply pretty much for most entities. If they lose their primary supply, they look to us to supply water, and then we start communicating pretty heavily at that point. We've not gotten into, you know, and listening to what Paul's saying, we've not gotten into a lot of detailed water quality discussions, because I think, and this is just my assumption, I think the industrial facilities believe that they need to, well, I'm not gonna say this way, but I don't know they necessarily trust us to give us the quality of water they need every day to meet their production standards. So each of them have their own treatment facilities, local to them. A lot of them do, RO units are, I know Westlake PVC and Arkema both run reverse osmosis filtration units. I don't know if you guys do or not, but
We get ours from, Westlake monomers.
Right.
And we have a very small amount of softened water that we use from them.
okay,
I think their softeners primarily feed their boilers.
yeah.
I don't know
Do you have any contact process water at all? Do you use any contact process water much in your
if
process?
river water.
Yeah, or,
Oh, yeah, that's what we mostly use.
okay,
Just clarified river water from
Right.
cooling towers.
okay,
That's by far probably the biggest water use
Mhm.
in that area is cooling tower water.
right, cool off your reactors, yeah.
And
So you're saying the plants draw water off the river directly?
They do, the majority of them do, and, now,
And price is right on that water, right? Does that come out free other than the infrastructure?
Well, it's not
treated, so-
free, it has to be treated, it has to be like cleaned and that, so they got
There's a
facilities.
price, yeah.
But its advantage is, well, it's soft.
yeah, Tennessee River water's, on the hardness scale is only 60. And here we said that we would try to get our hardness down to 100, which is pretty much standard. 60 is really soft. I mean, you got to rinse a lot to get soap off of you at 60. It's soft. So, but that's the river water is that way.
And
Well, one other comment then about communicating with the chemical plants and just with the community in general is I'm thinking of the Calvert Advisory Team monthly meetings. At some point, use that as a tool to give information, gather information or something along that line, just kind of to elevate everybody's knowledge. This is a big deal. We're looking at spending millions of dollars, and I know we can use our local news and papers and stuff, but the CAT team is there for big projects, and so usually the plants are doing, but this is one Calvert's doing. So I think we should consider that as a part of our communication tool here also in some way.
Yeah, I think you need to, as part of the process, you do need to have a formal communication plan, how you're going to communicate all this. So you get together as a group and decide how you're going to do that.
yeah,
CAT team's a good place. We've done presentations for the CAT team on the water and sewer system, and they all go over good. They got a pretty diverse group in there.
but the big thing you gotta stress to them is you need to have a number for them and say, hey, this is what it's gonna cost you,
Right.
and then they'll perk up and say yay and nay, but
Yeah. I mean, that was our experience on the industrial wastewater plant, so we had the state of the art proposal. It was an $85 million facility, but when you started talking about dollars per thousand, the plant managers locked up because they weren't anywhere near that in their current rates. But the thing that amazed me about that, they wouldn't look down the road here. And that scares me about Calvert City. Because I don't know, when you start looking at it that way, you don't know how committed they are to being here.
Sure.
And that's why. They looking at okay, I'm spending this much now, and I'm not going to spend that much down the road. But the reality is when they upgrade their facilities, they're going to be right there where we said they would be. So.
yeah.
It's a different day and time here.
Well, a lot of it's the business philosophy.
Yeah.
To a lot of people in business, 5 years is might as well be 1,000 years because they
Yeah.
don't plan on being here.
That's true.
But other companies are very future looking, so.
So the big point on that is another thing kind of outside the scope of this study, but it's a community issue. you gotta really realize how much of this project would industry being paying for and how much are they not paying for. So what happens if something happens to industry and nationwide, we come up with a set of policies where it's not conducive to doing business here anymore, and a lot of these guys shut their doors. What happens then, and what's the community left with? And that's something that you've gotta deal with that what if question as you're looking at this project.
Well, but for me, and I hear what you're saying, it's big dollars, but are you going to be driven by that fear, or are you going to keep taking the infrastructure you have and the resources we have in Calvert City, and are we going to keep improving them? And, and so I think our decision here needs to be on our best thoughts on what the future might look like and how can we help facilitate this community being prepared for the future. What do we know? What do we know about the future? What's the best thing we can build here to, make it ready? Earlier you're talking about the meters and creating a situation where they could be expanded to, with the towers and making them work even better. And so for me, we got to use those same thinking here. What are we doing, and how can we facilitate us being the most attractive water system available, so that maybe we even draw more chemical plants in versus ones leaving us. When the ones that we have leave, others will want to come because, man, that's state of the art stuff. So I think we need to think that way as much as possible.
Generally, to me, the plants think, if I need soft water, I will soften water. And if I don't need soft water, I don't want to pay for it. That's generally the way you think about it down there. And if you need it, you make it. That's just a capital expense or an operating expense. But if you don't need it, that's not something, there's no value to you, so you don't want to pay for it.
So what I'd argue with you on that is, what if I can give it to you cheaper than what you can make it for yourself?
Oh, then it's worth it, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the whole argument to me here is, can we make it cheaper than what you guys can make it yourself? And that's where I was getting to on the whole deal. The wastewater deal is a different issue, and what I know about that is I know that the proposal we had is going to be a lot cheaper than the guys going on it alone. And they're going to find that out in a couple of years when they go to re-up for their permits, and Ebonics and those guys down there, when they have to put in the type of plants they're going to have to meet the standards, it's going to be another ballgame. But that's over with. That's water under the bridge, And so this is kind of a similar situation.
Yeah, and I can understand that, but like for people like us, we only need a little bit of soft water.
Yeah.
We don't want to have all of ours softened. Well, we don't want to pay for it.
Well,
take it, but
the big boys that the board needs to worry about Arkema. Arkema is our best customer. They are absolutely our best customer. And then they use a lot of water from Calvert City Water. And there's a reason for it, because they need it for wet process. It's an ingredient in their product. And it just, we're able to control the quality of it to where they can rely on it. And that's one of the things that we need to be cognizant about. But I don't think that Arkema is going to quit running their RO units down there either. I think they'll keep running those. But maybe with better water, we can reduce their costs. And I don't know what their cost structure is, but that's what it is. It is business. It's all about what's the cost. What's the cost of business? So it's just one of the issues that we got to do. And, you get back to the site issue, that's kind of another deal that really needs to be decided upon. So you got all these pieces and parts, one, you got to refine what do I really want to build this plant for? Two, what kind of water quality standards do I really want to meet? Three, where do I want to put it? Four, how do I pay for it? How much am I going to finance? What kind of terms? And then what's my annualized cost got to look at? And then, as part of that, you got to look at the cost of operations. Capital cost and debt service is only one element of it, but what's it cost me to operate it? What's my ongoing cost structure going to look like annualized? And what's that mean on my rate structure? So you got all these pieces and parts. So to cut to the chase, Strand and Associates, as they've looked at this, they say, hey, we'd recommend you build a 3 million gallon a day plant. B, if you want to meet a hardness requirement of 100 part or 100 on the scale, which right now we run 180, 200, and it's an exponential reduction. It's a dramatic decrease in hardness. We're gonna recommend you use ion exchange, and we're gonna recommend you put it over here. And they've got all the other accessory units in it, you know, storage on site, high service booster station, everything. And they gave us the cost structure where they were at $12+ million capital. And then they had an annualized operational expense somewhere around $680,000 a year in their recommendations. So that's where they got to that at. And that's the nuts and bolts of what they'll come in and talk to us about. But before they did, I felt like we probably needed to raise some questions for them so they could be prepared to respond to what we would want to hear from them. They did do a pretty detailed analysis on the distribution system too, and that raised some eyebrows and some of the things that we experience on a day-to-day basis. You know, we've been concerned about our capacity of our high service booster station down there, and their numbers prove it. I mean, I didn't really realize that, and I didn't look at the modeling before, but there are times where we just simply can't meet the demand with our high service booster station, and the tank has to discharge off to meet some of the peak demands that we see that on an hourly basis. And I didn't really realize that, but I did realize, and we've talked about before, that we need to upgrade our booster station. With the largest unit out of service, we can only pump 2 million gallons a day. And I can tell you that, you know, we frequently see peak pumping rates here, 1,500, 1,600 gallons a minute. And that's with 3 pumps running. And we wouldn't be able to meet that if we had one out for service. So that's one thing for sure that we're going to need to take a look at addressing in the not too distant future. We need to upgrade that capacity. And my guess is that those pumps almost need to be doubled in that pump station. And along with that, we're going to have to make some distribution system improvements that can take that pumping rate without jacking system pressure out of sight. So those recommendations are presented in here. I think they're pretty solid. You know, you build a new plant over here, we're talking about the conversion of that 16-inch raw water main, you know, from this point on, and the 12, both of them into finished water mains, and that's going to help the system dramatically. That 16 main needs to be wrapped around and tied into Industrial Parkway to strengthen up that loop and that wheel. And there's some things that we can do, and you need to plan on incorporating those into the project as well. So I think they did a good job on the study. It looks good. It's just one of those things that, you know, they send it to us basically for us to issue some initial comments on, and then they're prepared to come in and give us a presentation on it. And then at that point you refine what you're going to do, you know. And I would tell you that beyond the new water plant, there are other things you can do, and we've all talked about it. You can go down there and refurbish the facility you have, but you need to flood proof it. You don't need to fight the flood every time the river comes up. So if you're going to refurbish that facility down there, you need to go in there and build a flood wall around it, you know, and it can be an earthen levee or whatever. And I believe that you can get it permitted to do, but you're going to have to totally rehab the filters and stuff. And there needs to be some things architecturally done with that site so it looks like a water plant and not something else. And you know, it just needs to, you need to make it more OSHA friendly on accessibility and things. They're just improvements that you need to do there if you were to refurbish that facility. Functionally, you know, it works, but it just needs some work on it because it's 40 years old. But the concrete's there, it's solid, it's not broken up. The filter bays are there. It's a 2 million gallon day plant, and you can do some things. So I think that's on the lower end of the scale. You can't get anybody excited about changing the location of the plant, and that you can go back and look at that. But I think generally, you know, most people you talk to, like you say, would probably agree if it's affordable enough that they would like like to see us build a new plant somewhere, get it out there. There was a comment made in there about being within the industrial zone down there, about having a plant in the middle of that, so there could be some issues if there was a big spill or accident in there, so.
Roger, I don't know the location of the high service booster station. I haven't heard.
It's at the existing plant. It's the small pre-engineered building that sets out next to Calvert Lumber Company in front of
Okay.
that storage tank.
Okay, I just didn't know where that was.
20 by 20 or 20 by 30 building is what it is, maybe.
It's like a diesel generator.
No, this one's up there in front of the tank. It's up by the road. It's the one you're looking at when you pull into the site off to the right in front of the one that's over by the diesel generator is the old high service station.
Okay.
That's where the two vertical turbines are in there, but the new one just sits out there, and it's not very obtrusive. It's not noticeable. It's the one that's got the aggregate panels on it. It's a nice looking installation. Our problem down there is trying to keep everything clean. It's just, you got to pressure water step probably twice a year to keep it clean like you need it to. It's just there's so much, I guess, mold or particulate matter in the air. It's hard to keep it clean and looking good.
Well, I think to me, it's the issue. I live over there by that, and those guys work and they work hard. I mean, I couldn't say enough things good about them, but everything comes before their property.
Yeah.
Their property is on the low priority list. If they've got more mowing than they can get done, guess what? They don't mow.
Yeah.
And I don't want to see that in this new plant. So the other thing is, if we redirect groundwater, make some kind of provisions for it. You can't keep leveling things up and dumping your water off on your neighbor and not doing anything about it.
Yeah.
You
You're
know?
talking about stormwater management.
Stormwater, rainwater,
Right,
runoff
right.
water.
Right.
And, if you're gonna do that, you've got to make sure that
To
you're
manage
taking
it.
care of all of it.
Yeah.
Don't, it's kind of like building a house. You get to the inside, it's usually the most expensive part, but then you spend all your money, so we don't want to do that with our plant. We want to have, I saw this for years at the institution I was at. We would build buildings, but we wouldn't hire another maintenance guy, or we wouldn't hire any more custodians. And you just kept asking them to do more, then you'd go through and something wouldn't look like you wanted it to look. So just make sure we provide the skill set and the labor out there we've got a facility that will look nice.
Yeah.
If you put trees out there and 25, 30% of them die, you'll replace them,
Sure.
so.
I mean, that's the way, I just feel, I agree with that. The water plants are a municipal institution and they need to look nice. I mean, I tell Silas all the time we talk about it, a picture's worth 1,000 words.
That's right.
That's the impression your customer's gonna get from you. It's how do you look? What are you doing out there in public? What do you look like? And whether you like it or not, it means a lot to the impression. And so, my desire would be to have a nice, clean, well-landscaped facility and.
Well, the one I look at is Benton's. When you drive down the road, is that the size sort of building we're looking at?
Benton's plant's just like our plant. I designed that plant. And
No, their plant's not like ours. Theirs looks a lot better.
well, let me tell you why I did. And I can tell you the backstory on that, but the guy, Brian Giltner, the guy we hired to work on this wastewater plant with Chad and him, when we went up there to design that, Betsy Flynn was on the council and she wanted something that looked nice and we made it look as nice as we could. She told us we wanted to match City Hall. And we matched City Hall with it. That was a municipal building. They wanted to keep that motif in town. And so that's why that went like it was. It wasn't that expensive. I think that project, with everything that we did on it, was a little over $2.8 million.
Like what Steve said, is we need something that sort of looks
Nice.
nice like that.
Right.
Yeah. It's okay, the one we got, and if you keep it in the back there, because no one drives by it, but you have it uptown,
Well, I doubt that any realtor showing property in the city takes them out of the water plant. We need to have something that they would say, hey, we'll show you where you get your water. And that's becoming more and more important, especially to younger generations, about the quality of life than some of us older people, you know. So I mean, just saying.
Oh, and you set the stage, look at your parks. And, I mean, the stage is said, we can do this. And, I mean, these guys here that we've hired to do the plan, they're very capable of doing us whatever we want whatever we want to do. They're the guys that did the Logan Todd facility with McGee Engineering out of Guthrie, Kentucky, and that's probably the largest facility in Kentucky. And I mean, they've got the technology. They know how to do all that. We can direct them to do whatever we want them to do. You know, we just you gotta set the stage and say, hey, I want it to look like this. And you can even tell them where you want it at. I can tell you that you got flexibility here, and it's a community decision where you want your new water plant at. I mean, I would say this about it though, it needs to be from Cedar Street to the well field, somewhere in between, and it needs to be above the floodplain.
Yes, it does.
That'd be my criteria for it, and anything else we make it work.
We really don't need to bore under that railroad track.
Yeah, it's not a good thing.
I think we can stay on and connect on this side of the railroad track.
It'd be better.
A lot better. But if you recall, we had to bore under one down there for rail services. That was 35,000 or something like that.
Lean into your mic, please, Dan. I can't hear you, Dan.
Oh, I'm sorry, I can lean back, Bill.
Tell your story there again. I like to hear what you know, man. I need you.
We, back a ways, before you got on the board, we worked with rail services to bore under the railroad track with the water line. And it was like, I may be wrong on my numbers, but it's like $30,000 that it cost. Plus you had to get permits from P&L and then you all that sort of stuff. So if we can stay on this side and tie into the distribution system without getting under that railroad, we would be a lot better off, which we can if we go up there in that area that by Steve's up in there, Public Works area. If we go down there by the school, it cuts under the railroad track right in there somewhere. So we might have to bore under to get to it on the other side. So,
More money, and you're saying time is the issue if we looked at the school site they're recommending.
I think so.
Thank you.
30,000 on $3 million, 1%, but still. Guess you'd have to look at all the costs, because
And you could hook onto it before it went under the railroad track. I guess you'd have to then bring the line back into your distribution system.
no, you'd have to have 2 lines, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, you can do it. But I don't have a problem with it, but I do want whatever they put there to keep it nice and keep it clean and let it be
We will,
something that adds to the city, not takes away from it.
we will proceed forward with this and get them engineered in. I have talked to the mayor about it, and he is in agreement with the advisory committee, because the city council will have a large say in it as well as us, so we can work hopefully between us and with the advisory team like we've done on some other things. And got some good people on there, and good people here. We'll continue on. We want to give you an update on where we are with that. Good day. Roger, you got some surplus property you need to get rid of?
Yeah, I'm just gonna bring it up to the board. We'll have to go before the council on it Monday night, but we want to option the dredge off and all the piping that we're done with. So, and that was part of the original plan. It's still in good shape, and we're optimistic that, the dredge will sell for $65,000-$70,000. I think is what we're expecting.
Yeah.
So that's what we'd like to do. And we gotta talk some more, we may put a pickup truck on that list too. So,
Okay. All right, I have a motion that we present that to the city council for approval. So moved.
One question, will there be a low bid set on the dredge?
you know, we would recommend that probably, yeah, I think so, and I'm guessing that needs to be 50,000, 60,000, something like that.
Yeah, I'd come closer to the same 60,000 because, you know, we took care of the dredge, all the parts and pieces are there. We kept the service up on it. It's still a good machine.
I'll second Steve.
We do have some communities interested in bidding on it that are, you know, for sure that we know of, two that we know of, manufacturer will bid on it, you know, to refurbish it. So we'll see, there may be some local folks too.
All right, I have a motion by Steve and second by Paul that we put the dredge and possibly pickup truck up for bid with the city council and surplus property with a low bid of 60,000 to be included. Satisfactory. All in favor, say aye.
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 Like sign. All right. Operation property.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure the board kind of understand what we're dealing with as we get into our fall season and head towards winter. And Silas, you got that list in front of you.
Yeah.
I'd like, I'll just go, of course, you're not mic'd up, but I'll go over them real quick and you can add up anything else. You know, as we talked about here early on, we've got to get the meters replaced. Better yet, we're lacking. We need to do our hydrant maintenance program too here pretty quick too. And that's in there as a priority. We'll continue to repair leaks like we've been doing. And, you know, we probably right now got a list of 8 or 10 leaks that we've got to fix. With that, where we had a leak before, we got to replace a hydrant down there in the Draftman's complex, and we got another hydrant that's leaking over there in front of Westlake Monomers. We do need to do our valve turning program. That's something that's pretty routine, but it's very important. You can't operate your valves when it comes main break time here in the truck. So that's important to kind of keep our costs down there. We got to work on that. We conducted some inspections here recently, and we know that a lot of the culverts, the outlets on the culverts are not being maintained, particularly off state highways. Then we got some water lines that are exposed up in the area of the creek, and we got to do something about it. Probably the worst one we got out there by the Neil O'Reilly store. It's been exposed again. We tried to work on it before. My suspicion is there's been a lot more drainage turned loose through that culvert from the project out on the interstate. But I don't know, we've still got to fix it. We'll talk to the state highway district engineer. Is there something he can do to help us minimize that energy that out of the culvert? But those things are expensive. They're every one of those type of situations is going to be 10 grand, you know, and just to fix it. We've got the same situation on a couple of sewer line crossings that we're working on too. Item number 8 there is certification testing. It's always ongoing. And we you know, this COVID-19 thing has hurt us on the training. We're going to have to get serious about getting ramped up on that. I know Silas is going to sign up, take his wastewater licenses, and then the apprentice is going to sign up for his drinking water. And then we got Glenn Knight signed up to take his next class on his wastewater. We got biomonitoring going on. That's something that we always have. It's not that big a deal. And then well number 5, drinking water analysis, getting samples and things of that. Those are things that we're going to be focusing on over the next month. You got anything to add to that, Silas?
No, that's pretty much it for this coming month.
And we will be cleaning our problem sewers because you guys know this is root intrusion period. You know, when leaves come off your trees, it's when you get them. Now, we've been treating our sewers with root killer, and I think it's been beneficial. I think it's something we need to continue to think about. That's about a $22,000 to $25,000 a year program, but we haven't, knock on wood, we haven't had any damage here in the last 3 or 4 years. Y'all remember, 4 or 5 years ago, 6, every every season. We had one or two, and it's just a nightmare. It's a nightmare for the staff to take care of. And it's a nightmare for the homeowner, a nightmare for the board. It's not a good situation. We're trying to stay.
Chemical you put down the sewer,
Yeah,
you send us some information on it, I need some,
yeah.
some
So there's
roots in our sewer line from our house.
there's a product called Rudex you need to look at that will help you on your line. So we use Dukes. The reason we use Dukes is that they warranty their water. You know, and if you have a backup and something and they've treated the line, they're supposed to stand behind it. So, but we still clean the lines and try to cut the roots out and keep that up. That's pretty important operations too. So that's the summary. If anybody's got any questions about that, you know, over the course of the next 4 or 5 months, you're gonna start hearing a lot of dialogue about asset management because of the regulatory agencies are requiring each of the utilities to start operating with that acumen of maintaining assets instead of corrective maintenance. They want us to be out ahead of it. And we've got our plans developed. Y'all remember we did develop, adopt a CMOM plan, and so we've got to develop a similar plan and adopt it for our water system. I'll just talk to you a little bit briefly about regulatory priorities, just to give you a little heads up on that. We are on top of it, but our drinking water monthly reports, we turn them in monthly. KPDS permit renewal application, those are issued on a 5-year frequency, and ours is due to expire April, I believe, the next year. So we've got to put our renewal application in October 30th, and we'll be asking to modify a couple of things in that permit, but we've already started working on it. We've got a third quarter corrective action plan report due mid this month. And our pre-treatment compliance inspections, we always do them about this time of year. We've also got to update our 5-year wellhead protection program. It just seems like yesterday when we had that meeting here in the council chambers, but we're got to update that again, and there'll be a little bit of a modification because we changed our wells that we're pumping now. And then the drinking water treatment, groundwater protection plan, that's not a big deal, but it's just one of those things that you got to do. The same thing for the wastewater groundwater protection plan. There's plenty of regulations and a lot of plans out there to, you got all kinds of things that we can do all the time. So every time you turn around, you got another plan you got to run. So
Where are we with the school? Where are you with the state of that?
the SCADA thing, the materials, the POs have been cut, the materials are ordered, and you know, they anticipate starting construction sometime this month. So it'll be later on this month, and the first thing they'll do is tie that fiber all together in the well field, I'm pretty sure. So, and then they'll do the repeaters and everything on the towers next.
Lindy, got the electronic payments in?
We are gonna go live, I'm happy to say, the 14th. So next Wednesday, they're gonna be training us, and that's what they've said is our live date. So we'll see how that goes. So next month, I should be able to tell you more. We finally got all the paperwork in and everything signed. It's been a process. But I think it'll be great.
I think so.
I do too.
I think you like it.
Maybe not the first month, but
Absolutely.
First month, maybe.
All right.
With the Roger's resignation, we wanted to have an executive session to talk about how we're gonna operate, where we wanna go and everything. So, with some recommendations, this comment. You got the reading that you need to go into executive session.
I did not get it. Did you get the KRS, Roger? You didn't? Okay.
You know how to get hold of that real quick.
Sorry, I should
So
have.
I've got the statute. I can put my hands on that statute.
Because I thought Crystal said she gave it to you.
Yeah, let me go print that real quick.
Can I still Zoom during the executive session? I mean, I'm free now. If I need to come up there, I will.
No, I think we can do it before that.
Okay.
While we're waiting, one's already on the agenda that we can talk about before we go into.
As long as you know what I mean.
I don't know, I mean, if it's executive
It's not a-
session.
we're not
She will
still running
stop it,
manually
but
on
what we
that,
need to
so-
do is have a motion and a second to go into executive session. So he will read the KRS statute or, just give the whatever. I'll write down the time and we'll have a motion second to go in.
What does that do, Phil?
And then Blair will stop that being live. And I
Okay.
also will stop my.
He'll still be,
Bill.
Bill will still be in this.
I think Bill could still be there. We just won't be live.
Yeah, so we don't want to be in the public
No,
Right.
portion or anybody that might be looking on.
that's my question.
Can you, I mean, once we go into executive session, can we keep Bill?
Yes,
You'll just turn off the live portion of it. Have you already made the motion?
No.
We have
No.
not. Roger's getting the
Wait,
KRS. I
Roger.
didn't have it.
I just wanted to say,
Okay.
if you have any other items you want to talk about before we went into executive session. Anybody?
What's all of our apprenticeship, like, still, our apprenticeship, that's going well.
Yeah, he's doing a great job. And with our apprentice, of course, the COVID, has had everything shut down, so he hasn't been able to actually go to the trainings that they were gonna offer. It's all been online. And, it's not the same as being in person, but Kentucky Rural Water is doing an excellent job with these online courses. And currently he signed up in a Sacramento course, which is very in-depth.
No, I'm sorry, Bill.
And Prentice is doing well, and then the other individual we brought on is doing well too. So,
I don't know anything about this stuff.
So I think it's just according, with KRS 61.810. I guess you call it section F. So that we can protect, talking about, anything pertaining to personnel issues.
Personnel.
Okay.
So now we can
you want to
have a
So with that, read.
motion to go into that.
Yes. We have a motion to go into executive session.
I'll make a motion, we're going to executive session.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Stay on.